All right. Appreciate everybody logging in tonight and appreciate Dr. Ricky Mullins presenting for us. Dr. Mullins is on my Extension Leadership Council. He's an instructor in the Department of Education at UVA-Wise. Um, and he and a colleague did a very good farm management meeting on farm dog training. It's been back last summer, I believe it was, and it was well received. And I appreciate him logging on tonight and talking to you all about some basic dog training. So, Ricky, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I'll share my screen here and hopefully y'all can hear the videos that I have, because some of this stuff is it's just better if I show you rather than just tell you everything. So we'll start this out as Phil said. I'm a professor in the education department, and I'll get into a little bit of my background here in a minute. But I'll run this like I would a regular class. I find that's probably the best way to get everybody involved. So I have something here, I guess somewhat of a warm up, and the warm up would be what intrigued you about this session today, and what do you hope to learn from what we're talking about, and what we'll do to make sure that we don't have a people trying to unmute or trying to talk at the same time. You just drop that in the chat if you're able to. Down at the bottom, you'll see chat, and you can just kind of drop in some answers there about you know um, what intrigued you about this, or what do you hope to learn about what we're talking about. I assume if you're logged in here, you logged in for a reason. You might have a dog that needs trained, or something. Maybe you had some questions about what it is that you're doing, or what your dog needs to do. So if anybody can, you have access. I know some people on their phone might not be able to, but you can drop some notes in the chat, just kind of saying, this is what I hope to learn today. This is what I'm thinking. So we have Jessica. I have 11-month-old puppy, and she's pretty good. She definitely needs a little work. We both do, and I'm glad you said that. The way you phrased that, Jessica, because a large part of dog training has little to do with the dog and has a lot to do with the owner. And that's something that we're going to talk about today. Is what do we have to do as dog owners to make sure that the dogs are trained properly for what we want them to do, whether it's farm work or whether it's just some personal goals that you have. Uh, Anybody else want to drop anything in the chat here? I'll wait a minute or so and see if anybody else drops anything before I move on. Considering getting a new dog, uh, thinking about getting a new dog, that brings me a little bit of stress, because I know that the amount of training that will come with that if you do get a new dog. So there's a lot that's comes along with that. So I'm going to talk about some things that will help you if you have a farm, you don't have a farm, if you're just looking for basic dog training principles. I think it'll be something that will be good for everybody. Somebody said we enjoy dogs, don't have a farm. We currently have an Australian Shepherd. Um, may have been her first year. Okay, yeah. We're going to talk about that, because now I'm going to talk about in terms of dog training is going to be talking about dogs that come from pretty bad backgrounds. And I think that's especially important, because if those dogs can be trained, and they can, then that gives hope, especially to dogs that maybe came from a great background or a great bloodline. So we'll go ahead and get into what we're going to talk about today. So who am I, and why am I talking to you about this? So that's what we're first of all, like, who am I, and why am I talking to you about dog training? So as Phil said, I'm currently on the VT Extension Leadership Council, providing connections, or what expertise that I can provide if I have any. And I certainly don't consider myself an expert really in anything, just somebody who has tried things and had some success, and that's what I'm trying to share with you all today. My PhD is not in agriculture, and it's not in dog training. I'm not sure if there is a PhD in dog training, but I don't have a PhD in dog training. and not in agriculture, although that I have experience in agriculture and experience in farming. That's not, I actually didn't even know that a PhD in agriculture was a thing until after I went to Virginia Tech and I got my PhD there. And then I realized that you could actually do some things in agriculture and really have a passion in that area. But as a first time college student, nobody in my family went to college, so I didn't really know what avenues existed. Um, and I was a teacher before I became a professor. I taught for several years, became an assistant principal, and then ended up going back to school and getting a doctorate. And that none of those credentials that I got qualify me to be a dog trainer of any kind. None of that qualifies me to be an expert in anything ag related or dog related. So again, why am I qualified to even talk to you about dogs today? Like, why am I talking to you about dogs? So I know this as a teacher. Theory doesn't really matter a whole lot if you can't apply it. If you don't know how to actually put into action what you're talking about, then it really doesn't matter how much high level knowledge that you have. And it really doesn't matter how many books that you've read until you actually know how to take something and apply. Now, I was raised doing carpentry work, and I was a carpenter while I was going to school. And I have a really hard time with top level theory that doesn't actually have some connection to what happens in the real world. I guess I'm a blue collar guy at heart, and that's where I see value is actually being able to put skills to use that you learn or that people talk about. So I want you to meet Rascal. Now, Rascal is a dog that earned his name. He was a Jack Russell Terrier, and pretty much looked like he did in this picture about all of his life. He was always into something. This was a dog that when I first got him, he ran underneath the coal truck, ran between the wheels, and lived to tell about it. I mean, he was just a handful. He was a difficult dog. He was a very difficult dog. And he was abused when I got him. He had the mange. He was flea infested. And I would say to this day, he is the most stubborn animal I ever met. And I have some dogs. I have 2 dogs now, and I have 30 chickens and 3 roosters and 2 goats. And he is the most stubborn animal I've ever had in my life. He was very difficult. And if I wanted him to live past 1 year old, I had to figure out something. But he made it 14 years, and eventually his craziness still got the best of him. He ran through a farm fence. He ran through an electric fence and managed to chase a dog up the road and get hit by a car. Even with all the training that he had, he was still his own worst enemy, still into everything. And he was a wonderful dog. But man, I learned a lot by having him, and I learned a lot by realizing what kind of dog what kind of training it took to deal with such a stubborn dog. So what I found out through training Rascal was this: what worked for him worked for every animal that I owned. Every animal that I owned started responding to the intense training that I was doing with Rascal. So I was able to train one of my big goofy dogs, Bruno. We recently lost him. He was almost 20 years old, and he responded to the same training that Rascal did. The intensive training that I had Rascal on the schedule, it worked. It worked for him the same way that it worked for all of my other animals. And it also worked believe it or not, on an outside cat that I had, that she actually responded to the training the same way the dogs did. So I started to see that there was consistency in how animals responded to what I was doing with Rascal. So our cat Oreo was straight out of the depths of where. She was very, very difficult, but she would respond the same way that all of my other animals respond. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that you can do that worked with these animals. So at nighttime, I could actually I could tell my dogs and my cat, I could say it's time for bed. My outside dog would come in, Rascal would go to bed, and so would the cat. The cat would actually come in and kennel herself in the wintertime and would come in the house at night and lay down in the cage, and then I would lock her up as well. So this is something I did with Rascal when we had him, that I was just being funny with him one night. And there's a poem called to Bed by David Lewis. I guess his last name's Paget. And this is Rascal going to bed. I hope y'all can hear this. David Lewis Paget. To bed, to bed, to bed, said Sleepyhead. Tarry a while, said Slow. So Rascal knew the bed command. He would go up, and that's one of the many things that he learned. But I used this same principle to apply to a rescue dog that I recently acquired named Maggie. Now, I got Maggie 2 days after Rascal passed away. She was abused. She was locked in a basement, and there was pretty good indication that cigarettes had been put out on her. She was in really bad shape. She was scared to death, and she had to go through some pretty intense training to even get to where she wouldn't have an accident in the floor when she was spoken to. She was scared to death of men, which didn't fare well for me when we first got her trying to train, because I don't know if a man had abused her, but she was very, very scared of males of any sort. Even though I was the one who went and got her out of the pound, she was still scared of any man. So what did we start with? Well, I started through trust through consistency. I had to make sure that everything that I did was consistent every single day. I couldn't miss any of the training days or any of the training times. I had to make sure that everything that was okay one day was okay the next day. Everything that was wrong one day was wrong the next day. And I had to develop her trust, first of all, before I ever got her to a point to where I could train her. So tone and approach. Now, this is something important when you're training a dog, is not every dog that you have is going to respond with the same kind of tone and approach. She didn't respond the way Rascal did. Rascal, I could say something like, Rascal, come, with that tone, and he would come over. Rascal, sit. He would sit. If I had that tone with her, she'd pee in the floor. I couldn't speak the same way to her that I had to Rascal. And that's an important thing to realize with dog training, is you got to know what the dog responds to, the firmness of your voice, the gentleness of your voice. Every dog's going to be different with how they respond. And only you know that, because you're with your dog. You know how the dog responds. And the dog doesn't, Maggie doesn't respond to that harshness of voice. You have to be very kind but firm with her before she'll do what you want her to do. Now, this is how we first started with Maggie. We first start with getting her to feel safe in her kennel, because she was scared to death of her kennel. She was scared to death to go in, but she needed a safe place because she was abused. So for a couple weeks, the only thing that we worked on was Maggie go in. Maggie would go in. I'd close the door, give Maggie the command to stay, and then open it. And when she started to walk out, I would shut the cage until that she got to a point to where I told her to go in. She would lay down. That when dogs lay down like that, what that is them surrendering. And as soon as she surrendered, as soon as she laid down, I gave her a treat. And for 2 weeks, that's all we worked on, about 4 times a day, 15 minutes a session. And it was very intensive training. And I a couple times in the morning time, a couple times in the afternoon, that's all we worked on. And I think that's the thing, is like a lot of people think, well, I need to start like teaching the sit command. I need to start teaching, give me your paw. I need to start teaching her to sit. But for a long time, the only thing we're working on is getting you to trust me, getting you to go where I tell you to go, and getting you to feel safe in the place I told you to go. And that was a success for a long time, just getting her in that cage, because that she was abused and scared to death. Then we started from there into moderate training. So a big one is sit. So how do you get a dog to sit? The best way I found to do that is sit and gently push her butt down until she surrendered, and then gave her a treat. If she was resisting back, then I would keep pressing, just press a little bit, Maggie sit, press a little bit, Maggie sit. And when she sat, I immediately would give her a treat to let her know, this is what I'm telling you to do. This is what I wanted you to do. And this is a good thing that you did. stay. So hand out, as soon as she stops, give a treat. Hand out, as soon as she stops, give a treat. I'm going to talk about in a minute, like why are these important skills for a dog to have? They're very important, especially as you're training your dog to do different things. You have to start with these basic commands that will transfer to your dog being able to really do what you want the dog to do around people. Leave it, put food down. As soon as she tried to get it, told her to leave it and picked it back up. Again, all of these commands, this is maybe all we did that week, is starting with the sit. And we train that 4 times a day. And we're integrating, okay, you're going in your cage, we're practicing that. Now we're practicing sit. We might practice those together for a week, and then we move into stay. Hand out. As soon as she stops, give a treat. We add that in and take a couple weeks with that. Leave it, put food down. As soon as she tries to get it, told her to leave it and picked it back up. Now, these are important things because this leave it command, this stay command, it transfers when you really need them to stay and you really need them to leave something alone that they're messing with. It works with a variety of things. Speak. When I wanted her to speak or I needed her to use her voice. And like I said, we're going to talk about why these are important skills here in just a minute. So it might sound silly, but when I'm teaching the speak command, I literally bark to show her what I mean. So I will, Maggie, speak. And when I do that, then I would go, ah, and let her know that I'm trying to get her to do that. And before long, she started picking up when she says speak, he's wanting me to do the same thing. So now when I say speak, she'll give that response. As a matter of fact, she's over in her kennel right now as I'm doing the training, and she's perking her ears up as I'm doing this. Like, what am I supposed to speak about over here in the cage? And then time for bed in your house. That's slowly what we transitioned her inner kennel from through repetition. So after she learned that skill of in, then we would start saying, Maggie, time for bed, Maggie in, and slowly transition her into her kennel through this command. You can change what the command means, but you have to be, you have to repeat it and you have to be consistent as you repeat it. And all of these skills I'm talking about, sit, stay, leave it, speak, in your house, all of these translate well on the farm when you need your dog to listen to you while you're working. And you say, well, I don't have a farm. Okay. All of these skills still, they work if you're on a walking trail, if you're on a hiking trail, if you need the dog to listen to you, if you see a bear, if you see another dog, all of these things are very important for your dog to be able to understand what it is that you want them to do in the moment. So Maggie's a farm dog, but sometimes Maggie goes on hikes with us and we have ran into bears. And when I see the bear and I'll say, stay, and she'll stay back behind me, or sit, I want you to surrender for a second. Or she's starting to mess with the snake and I say, leave it, Maggie, and she'll back up from that, whatever she's messing with. All of these commands are good for her safety and good when I need her in different settings to obey what I'm telling her to do. So when we're out on a walking trail, I don't live far from the Guest River Gorge. And when we're walking on the walking trail and we run into a dog that could seem aggressive, and I need her to say, okay, Maggie, I need you to stay. I have her sit on the side of the trail till the dog passes, or I need her to go on past. And I've noticed like that, those commands translate in to he's in control, and he'll tell me what it is he wants me to do. He'll tell me what it is how he wants me to act when we get around other dogs or when we're on a walking trail or doing something. So advanced training. So as we got all of these skills developed, I would literally have my wife beat on pots and pans with her focusing on me. So my wife would be in the background clapping, beating on pots and pans, trying to scream to get her attention. And what I would do is, Maggie, focus, Maggie, here, I want you to look at me. And I would do these trainings because there's going to be times in the future where we're outside and we're working, there's equipment running, and I need her to focus on me in the moment and not on the equipment. I need her to focus on me instead of the livestock. I need her to focus on me instead of the dog that's on the trail. I need her to focus on me instead of the bear that's on the trail. So all these distractions, all of this noise, I need her to get to where she focuses on me, not on anybody else. So we would do it with different distractions, with the vacuum running, with pots and pans beating, so that, hey, when I'm talking, I need you to listen to me because it's very important. And we would do that. We did this for a couple weeks. We would go through training sessions where she would be trying to get Maggie's attention, but I needed Maggie to focus on me. So anytime we had a visitor, we still do this from time to time. She's very wary of strangers. Where she was abused, she didn't really. So what I would do is when we had strangers, I would say, hey, could you bear with me just for a second? And then I would put her through training exercise of, Maggie, I want you to sit. Maggie, I want you to lay down. Maggie, I want you to leave it with people present. So again, when you have distractions or you have what you feel is a threat near you, I need you to focus on me and not on the threat. I need you to trust me. And that consistency built her trust that, okay, when he's around, I focus on him. If there's another dog around, I focus on him. If there's another distraction around, I focus on him. And we do this 4 to 6 times a day, 15 minutes at a time, and we made it very fun. Wasn't a thing where we was grouchy towards her, or I said, oh, Maggie, you can't believe you didn't do that. Always fun, always positive, to teach her that training's a fun thing. It's not something that has bad consequences. It's something that has good consequences, something that has treats at the end of it. It's something that's fun that you're going to get pets for. So recently we've been working on having her put goats in the barn. Now, mixed success. Sometimes she wants to get distracted and play in the poop because she's a dog. But we'll say, Maggie, I want you to put them in the barn, Maggie, put them in the barn. And she'll run and put them in the barn. And then sometimes she gets a little overexcited and we have to get her out so she don't get headbutted by the goats. So she's been working on that from time to time, but we also got to think about her safety in the fence with them. So
we're doing Maggie.
This is when we first got her. So to give you an idea of how timid she was, how scared she was, you could see the effects of abuse on her.
We're doing Maggie.
Look at the little Callie you got on your head. Did you see this? You got a Callie.
Here, Maggie. Here, Maggie. Maggie, come here. Come on. Nope.
So then we build her confidence. A few weeks later, this is Maggie.
Maggie. Maggie. Maggie. Maggie.
So now Maggie in action now. This is the more advanced stuff that we've had Maggie do since then. So you're going to be able to see the progression of training and how that she's responded differently from the time that we first got her till now. And then outside with a bunch of different commands with the distraction of the other dog around her. Again, when you're going to have animals, they're probably going to be around other animals, and you have to get them where they can focus on you and not anybody else. Good girl, Maggie. Leave it. And then us teaching Maggie when it's okay to go outside, when it's okay to come in. Again, when you're going on the farm or you're going on a hike, it's okay for you to proceed. It's not okay for you to proceed. You need to wait till my command before it's okay for you to go, because their safety is in your hands.
Maggie. Stay.
My wife doing the narrating.
Good girl. Come.
And then back in. So we talked about Maggie. Now we're going to get into something that's maybe a bit more difficult, and that is Belle. You probably noticed Belle in the other videos. She's the newest addition that we have. She is a livestock guardian dog, and livestock guardian dogs are much, much more difficult to train than traditional breeds, farm breeds like Australian Shepherds, Border Collies, even into pit bulls, beagles. Livestock guardian dogs are by their nature, they're very stubborn dogs, and that's for a reason. So we're going to talk about Belle just a little bit. She knows come, sit, and leave it. She doesn't know all the commands that Maggie knows. So the breed does matter because the breed speaks to the independence and what the dog typically needs to do and how the dog needs to behave according to their bloodline and their breed. So when we first got Belle, we were told that she could not be around any livestock. She was at the pound. I called her. They said that she can't be around livestock. I said, why not? They said, because she kills chickens, and I have a lot of chickens. And I said, well, can you call and ask the previous owners what had happened and why that she can't be around livestock? So they called, and they had her in a pen with chickens, and she killed chickens, and that was not the design of what she was going to do on my farm. So I got her, and I would catch the chickens, and when she would get very excited about the chickens, I would hold the chicken up, she'd smell of it, and I'd go like that. I kept associating, like, we don't get overexcited about the chickens, we protect the chickens. And I kept repeating that to her and associating the chickens with that noise of we don't mess with them, we don't get excited, we don't pounce at them. And she's not messed with the chicken since I've had her. She's never killed a chicken since I've had her. And you know, the thing with livestock guardian dogs is they're supposed to be independent, they're supposed to be forward thinking, and you really don't want to try to train that out of a livestock guardian dog. If there's Pyrenees, Anatolian Shepherd, she is Anatolian and Border Collie mix, Akbash, any of the dogs that's their job. And I'll tell you why. A perfect example is one night I came home on a Wednesday night. I came home from church, and she was up on the hill next to the chicken coop, and I told her to come because she seemed to be acting a little odd, and she wouldn't come. And I said, Belle, come down here. And Belle, she wouldn't budge. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to go see what's going on up there. So I went up there, and a chicken had flown over the fence, and she laid with the chicken until I got home because that was her job to protect it. And if she had listened, she would have left the chicken vulnerable. So in her breed is that independence of, I will listen until I know that I don't need to listen. And you have to have a little bit of trust in a livestock guardian dog, that especially one that's well trained to do what they do in terms of protection, that she knew what was better than I did at that moment, and she did not come, and she was staying with the animal she was supposed to protect, and that's where her allegiance was. So here's her doing her basic commands. Come, Belle. Come here. Good girl. Sit for me. That's a good girl. Okay. You're good. Girl, sit. She surrenders by sitting, but there is not I don't want her the same level of obedience that I want Maggie, because Maggie is inside of fences with the animal. She is out on hiking trails. She is going different places, and Belle never leaves the farm. Belle's job is to stay with the livestock. So her skill set and her stubbornness needs to be what it is for her to protect the animals the way that she needs to. So some training takeaways. Most important thing is to transfer training to different situations and make sure that the dog's not just trained in your house, not just trained in your living room, but you've trained the dog in different places. And as I said, we would do the distraction thing. I would train her on walking trails. I would train her in different scenarios to make sure that the training was transferred. Training isn't linear. You're not going to have success every day. Your dog's not going to progress every day. There's going to be great days where they listen, they do what they're supposed to, and there's going to be days where it seems like all the training is out the window. And there may have been something that happened that day that had distracted them, or sometimes they're just like people. They have bad days too. So every day is not going to be an awesome day with your dog. There's going to be days where you're like, well, this didn't work. but that doesn't stop the consistency. You still have to be consistent yourself, even if they're not feeling it that day. Remember, I said it's about you as much as it is about them, and learning how to respond to them and what they need. As I said, repetition and consistency is key. You have to make time every single day. And if you don't have time, then don't start training. You don't want to start training until you make sure you have that bandwidth in your day, in your schedule, to train the dog the way they're supposed to. We recently had 2 very young children back to back. And I don't have the bandwidth to have a dog right now that's new and that isn't trained. So the timing is key, and the bandwidth of when to train them, that's also key. And for livestock guardian dogs, sometimes if you have an LGD, you might try training and they might not respond, and you might try training, they might not respond. Sometimes you have to get to a point where you realize that that livestock guardian dog might not be a fit for your place. And a good example, we had a dog that was an Akbash and named Moose, and Moose was very hard to train. And we kept Moose for about 8 to 10 months. Now, livestock guardian dogs usually display puppy tendencies till they're about 2 years old, but you can usually tell up front if they're going to respond a little bit to you. And Moose needed more land than I have. He needed a lot more things to keep him busy. And we gave him to a cousin of my wife's, and he lives on 100 and some acre farm over in Pound. And he's living his best life. He's protecting cattle from bears. He's got the property to roam, and he's doing very well. My property was not enough to keep him busy. And sometimes you need to realize when, hey, they're not responding to anything you're doing. Your energy might not be what they need. Your training might not be what they need. Your property might not be what they need. And there's some points when you need to say they need to go somewhere else when it doesn't fit. So you have to be honest with yourself and realize when this is not working out. So, of course, I can take a minute for questions if we have time for questions. You can email me. This is my home phone number. I'm not a big cell phone guy. I really don't have a cell phone per se. My wife has a flip phone, so that's not the best way to get in contact with me. But if you ever would like for me to come to your place or your property and take a look, I'd be glad to do so. But you can get in touch with me via email pretty easily, or you can call my home phone. It's a Kentucky number, but I live local in Coburn. But you're welcome to reach out, or I can take a minute for questions if there's time. I don't know. So I'll stop and share there, and then just leave them a minute here.
We have time for questions. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and you can drop them in the chat if you'd like. Great information there, Ricky. I think anybody who has a dog is looking at a dog. I think that's good information, definitely.
And when my colleague did the training with me, I was a little worried because I hadn't consulted with him. He's in the psychology department, and he and I are very different in terms of our backgrounds. And I was a little worried that when he spoke, I didn't know what he was going to say, but I thought he might say everything that Ricky just said is not right. But he actually gave credence to everything I said and explained it from a psychological perspective of, yeah, what he's doing works, and here's why it works. So I thought that helped me, because I was doing it from experience. Like I said, I don't have an expertise in this area. I just had success in this area. And, but it does work. Have you ever tried to train a dog not to bark? I have found with Maggie, my commands of leave it applies to when she barks. So like when she starts to bark at something, I'll go, Maggie, leave it. And that is a command to her of I'm not to be interested in what's going on right now. And I've seen that when she barks at squirrels, when she barks at deer, when she barked at a bear a couple times that she ran off. Of course, I was not too upset about her barking at the bear, but there's sometimes I don't want her to bark, at neighbors. We don't have a neighbor very, very close, but sometimes she'll run to the fence line and bark. And then when I tell her to leave it, she will usually stop. We have a 7-month-old GS that is a biter. She can get aggressive about it. She's the boss of her litter and is strong-willed. What GS? German Shepherd. That's a biter. She can get aggressive about it. So, I guess my thought would be on that is the reason she's aggressive matters, and all behavior communicates something. And is she? I wonder if she's aggressive. Does she get aggressive because you get nervous because you think she's going to be aggressive, or is she just typically aggressive?
She's not typically aggressive, but she has days where she just has like a mouth fetish. She really wants to bite, and she can get pretty rough. And some of it's the mood that she's in, but we thought that maybe she wasn't getting enough exercise. It doesn't matter if I take her out on a 7-mile hike. She can turn right around and get aggressive. And we're not sure exactly what's triggering that or how to break her from it. I mean, I've tried a collar, I've tried commands, I've even smacked her in the nose. And the more aggressive I get with her, the more aggressive she gets with me. So it's like she was the boss dog, and she still wants to be the boss dog, if that makes any sense. I kind of feel like she's not wanting to bow down.
Okay. Now, does she, when you sit still, does she lean against you?
Yes, she wants to
Okay.
be all over us. So it's not that she is, it's not that she's a mean dog, and we've had her since she was 7 weeks old. So it's not that she's wired mean or anything. It's just that we had another one that was just a totally different dog, much more friendly and loving. And this dog is just a grouchier dog, I guess, or she can be. She's got a meaner bark. She's just more aggressive all the way around. But that biting thing, she can be pretty. She's broke skin on us several times because she's just getting really aggressive.
So with dogs like that, the reason I asked, does she lean against you? Does she try to get on you? With dogs like that, sometimes what ends up happening is the way that we would respond to other dogs of like, hey, you can get up on the couch with me, or you can get on my bed, or you can lean against me. When they do that, especially the leaning against you, my livestock guardian dog tries to do that. That's a show of dominance in a dog when they lean against you. So when my livestock guardian dog leans against me, I take my knee and I bump her, and then I take my hand like a mouth, like a dog's mouth, and I grab her here. I don't like choke her, but I grab her here and I say, "You get back," and I push her. So like another dog, that's how they would assert their dominance, is grabbing that nap of the neck and pushing. Like, hey, I'm in control here. And I saw that when I had that big old goofy German, that big old brown dog I showed y'all at the beginning. When she first came here, he grabbed her by the back of the neck and he pinned her on the ground until she yelped. He never hurt her, and he did that just for a second, and then he walked away, and that was it. Like, hey, I'm in control here, not you. And I found with her, when she tries to lean and I do that bump, and then I grab her and say, you don't do that. And that kind of dog, you can't let him on the couch, you can't let him in the bed, because you got to like, I'm in control here. These are my spaces. You don't get in my space. When they do that, they're trying to say, I control this area. I control your couch. I control you. When I lean against you, it's because I'm dominating you right now. And I'd say with her, that's what's going on. If I had to guess, is because my LGD, if I'd let her, she would dominate. She'd want to dominate me because she's big. She's 115, 20 pounds. So she's like, I'm big. I'm big enough to push against you. And she'll try it once a week. Like, we'll go outside and she'll butt up. And when she does, I'll kind of body check her like I would another dude, like, hey, you need to back up a little bit, and then she'll go on her way. So I would try that to start with. And then one way we trained aggression with Maggie is when she would eat. Now, what I'm getting ready to tell you, I'd be careful with, because I wouldn't do this with the LGD. When we first got her and she was a puppy, when I gave her food, I would put my hand in the bowl and put the food on top of it, make her eat out of my hand, so that she wouldn't display any aggression when I put my hand near her mouth. Of like, hey, I get to take your food and I get to give your food, and you don't get to be aggressive about anything. So I would try some of that and just kind of dominance of like, you're going to have your space and me my space because you're a different dog than our other dog was.
Good job.
Any other questions? And Margarita, of course, I have your email, and I will respond to you. I know I saw that you responded back to me from a correspondence we had today, and I'll send you some stuff here in a little bit because I know your background and whatnot. So I'll try to reach out to you, hopefully maybe by tomorrow with some information. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts about anything?
Well, again, Ricky, great job. Is there anything else that you think you might have missed that you want to add? Good information there. The good information definitely to Shad. Awesome question, Shad. That's definitely some information that's very handy.
And the aggressive dog question, that it can be hard because only the person with the dog really can see the behavior all the time. And I recently almost got bit by a dog. I got it to calm down. It wasn't my dog; it was somebody else's dog. And a big thing that I noticed that person was doing that's making the dog aggressive towards other people is how that guy's holding the leash with that dog. If you're relaxed, the dog's relaxed. But every time people come around, he pulls, and when he pulls, that signals the dog, I need to attack. And I about got bit, and in that moment, I couldn't really do a lot about it. And I think that's because sometimes in the moment it's hard to assess until after the fact, especially if the dog's being aggressive, and you don't have any control when the dog's aggressive, like on the leash. So I think that matters too, is the context of the aggressiveness. And like, if the dog's on the leash when it's being aggressive, it might be because it's on the leash. It might be because it's picking up that tenseness. So yeah, the aggressive dog one, that can be tough because there is a line to where the dog gets too aggressive, and everybody knows what the end of that line is, and that's a sad point to get to, but there is a path that way, and yeah, that can be a hard one.
We wanted her to be more aggressive than the last dog. We had one that died of what we think was blastomycosis, and that dog was great natured. But she was a little bit of a pushover, and we wanted one to be a little more, and this dog is just wired that way. So we were happy for that, but there's kind of a line, like you said, like when we go out for walks, you don't want her to bite somebody or to eat up somebody else's dog, but you do want them to guard. If we go for a walk and a dog comes running at us barking, you want her to defend. So it's kind of hard. You don't want to break the good part of them that you want, but you don't want them trying to pull that stunt on you. So.
And I think that's, like you said, Shad, it's a fine line with that too. That's kind of where I'm at with my livestock guardian dog, is like, I want her protective. And that's part of the reason with her that she's never allowed in the house, because I don't need her getting to a point where she's that comfortable in the house with us, where she thinks she's a lap dog basically instead of a guardian dog. But I guess, the biggest thing is, and now this is easier said than done, kind of probably start from ground zero and start back through training, and then be very patient with you and the dog, and know that it's probably going to take a good bit to get that aggressiveness towards you all out when she wants to nip, especially if that's her nature anyway. You're muted, Chad.
When the last time she did it, it was when we just got her out of the kennel, and I went out to feed and to get her out a little bit, and she immediately started wanting to bite on me. And I was trying to get her to calm down, and the more I did, the more aggressive she got. And I finally just came back in the house and got the collar and put on her. And when she started that again, we know what her number is that will get her attention. And she yipped and laid down, and she didn't do it again after that. And honestly, she hasn't done it since, but I don't trust that that has solved the problem. She relapses just like what you said. So,
And you might go out and repeat what you did too with the call, like with the collar, go out and repeat the same thing. And then when she does that, because what she done when she laid down was that surrender I was talking about, where she's like, I get it, you're in control. And you might repeat that then. And then when that she crosses, like kind of push her to cross that line a little bit. And when she starts to, you drop, and then she's like, okay, that's the line. I'm not supposed to do that. And eventually you can do it without, then you can turn it down if it's got a vibration setting. You go down to vibration and then eventually get it to where, when we trained one of our dogs, we had a collar, and when they crossed the line, we would buzz and then give a command of enough. So then when it goes down to vibrate, enough. And then before long, the enough is just, I better stop.
right.
That's kind of how we had to train Rascal with the underground electric fence that he ran through when a dog came by, but is walking him up and saying, Rascal, back, and then a little buzz. And then he's like, okay, when they say that, they mean stop. So that's good to know right there, because I think if you use that knowledge there is, hey, this is the line you don't cross.
Very good.
Good stuff there. I've got one for you on the opposite end of the spectrum, Ricky, that we, I guess it's the age old adage or whatever. It's a dog that'll dig. Doesn't matter if they're digging in the yard or digging out from under a fence. What's your thoughts?
So, man, Moose was a digger. He dug the china. I mean, he dug everything. I about had a fit with him. I bought this stuff called No Holes that I think he took as a personal challenge to dig holes when I would spray that. You couldn't get him. I mean, you could not get that dog to stop the dig. I mean, he would dig craters. But now my dog now, Belle, she likes to dig because that's in her nature. They'll dig perches. LGDs will dig perches to what property. And I let her do that, make a perch here and there. But what I have found that works with her and my other dog when they want to dig is going to kind of sound like really is I got a big Kong toy, and when I see that they start to dig, I had perceived that as I'm bored. I need something to do. I need something to work on. So I'd feel that I'd put some ham down in that, and I would fill it full of peanut butter, and I would give it to her, and she would work on that and felt like she had a job to do. And by the time she finished that, she didn't dig anymore. Because I finally figured out that she was looking for, like, she wanted to do something. So in her mind, she was digging to find something or to do something, to find a mole, to find whatever existed down in the ground there. And when she dug outside of the yard, like in the woods and whatnot, I would praise her when she did that and let her know, like, this is where you dig. You got a good place. You can dig here. You don't need to dig down here. And the minute I would do it, I would be like, and then I would give her a treat to try to redirect her attention with that and keep her busy. And I found that worked for dogs that weren't obsessive.
Basically boredom, and you were having to solve the boredom.
Exactly. And with Moose, you could not get him to be not bored with the acreage that I have. So no amount that I gave him would work with him. So there are dogs that they do have a line of like, man, they're just going to do this. But for her, Belle, she that's how she responds. Rascal was the same way. And Maggie is the same way. And then, of course, you have some of those dogs that are just dreams and they don't do anything. That was Bruno I showed you at the beginning. He didn't get into anything. He acted like he pretty much was Old Yeller. He just barked at stuff and ran around. He didn't get. What kind of dog is it, Jeremy?
Beagle, and only Beagle that I've had that wanted to wanted to dig, and so it's odd that but evidently it's in his nature, and it, basically digging in the middle of the yard, digging up against the house, digging out from under a fence. I mean, he's got free range of 100 by 100, foot yard with a chain link fence around it, but you know, he'd rather be out, so to speak. You know how it is.
I have 3 or 4 acres fence that I had for moose, and he was inside that 3 or 4 acre expanse, and he would dig a hole right in the dead center of the yard. I mean, of all the property he could do it, he would come down to the house, and he'd quit digging as long as I gave him that. And the minute he got done, he'd be back at it. And when he used those giant paws, I mean, he's taking shovels full at a swipe. But if your dog's not crazy with energy, I'm betting that the Kong thing would probably solve the problem. I'm betting.
We've tried every toy under the sun, just to cure the boredom, but we've never tried the Kong thing. Who knows? He may destroy it, but it's worth a try to find out. Definitely, I think that's good information. Just not only for myself, but anybody that's watching this live or on tape delay, as they say.
I got the indestructible Kong that it's about that long, about that big around, and I put, like I said, I dropped a couple pieces of ham in there, and then I bought a big tub of cheap peanut butter, like the jumbo great value size, and I packed it full of that and threw it out. And I mean, he worked on it for really probably an hour and a half. And Bill, especially when I give that to her, it keeps her busy. And by the time she gets done, she's wore out, and then she'll go lay down up in her kennel and just kind of hang out.
Good deal. Is that something you're doing on a regular basis, or did they finally just?
Really, it's seasonal. I find it seasonal that Belle will pick up with that kind of behavior when it gets spring and she starts getting excited because it's getting warm and she's running around. Like, she trimmed my blackberry bushes for me today, and I found her in my woodshed earlier. Like she was trying to get some wood out to chew on. And when I start to see that behavior is when I'll start. Okay, let's revisit the Kong a time or two, and I'll get her attention redirected, and then she'll get that energy out of her and she'll be fine. So the way I do it is, I'll monitor and I'll see, like, when do I feel that she needs it. And I feel like most dog owners, like, when your dog's starting to veer and you're like, okay, I'm starting to see that they're getting a little restless, probably need to do something about it. So I don't do it all the time or on a regular basis or not on a schedule, just when I start to sense that she needs some busyness.
Gotcha. To get that energy out.
Yep.
Awesome. Good information there. I see you have one in the chat there.
We have a Shih Tzu. She's very smart but stubborn. We found that this breed was trainable but requires a lot of repetitions. That's how my Jack Russell was. Jack Russell is I think a Jack Russell is probably like a Shih Tzu, probably smarter than most owners. I think Rascal a lot of the time was smarter than me. He could always figure out what I was going to do before I did it and try to already have a workaround. But he was kind of the same way as, like, every day was a new day with him. So the repetitions had to be like, man, with Maggie did 4 times a day. Sometimes Rascal, I'd have to do like 10, 12 sessions a day to get it ingrained in him. And once I did, it was good. It just, it took a lot. And sometimes that's the case with breeds.
Good stuff. Anything else? We got just a few more minutes. Maybe time for another question or two.
So I've got one more since nobody else is going to ask. So we got a little rescue dog that was like a Benji dog, and he was, I don't know, how old was he? Probably 2 when we got him, and he had lived all over town. And my daughter had begged for a dog at that point, and so he showed up at the house, and he became our dog. And we have struggled. He has wandering tendencies, We have struggled to try to get him to not run off, and he will do really good for a while, and then it's just like he gets the urge to go for a walk, and he takes off. And you can let him out of the kennel, and he will be gone in seconds, and we'll have to chase him all over the neighborhood, and just go looking for him. So I just wondered if there's any tricks, if you can teach an old dog new tricks, if there's any way to get him to leave his wandering ways.
Yeah, that was Bruno. Before we got Bruno was the big brown dog I showed you, had his face on the ground, the goofy looking thing. That was pretty much his story. He wandered around the town of Wise, and that's what he did. He was everywhere. And when we got him, we lived in Blacksburg, and every time he could slip his collar or had a moment, he would take off, and we would chase him through neighborhoods, and we would call him, and I'd have to go get him. They called dog animal control on him. And this was something that went on with him until he was probably, goodness, I'd say 7 or 8 years old. And I'm telling you all this stuff of my failures because I feel like I learned a lot from things that didn't work for a long time. Then we moved to Kentucky. And when we were in Kentucky, we lived out on a pretty expansive farm territory. And he had the run of a good amount of acreage. And he found, I guess, his life's calling, and that was to protect that property. And he never left again, never had a desire to leave again. And that was probably him being 14 years old that he did that he was still a wanderer. And we really about killed ourselves trying to figure out, like, how do you get this sucker to stay home? And it was the job. It was kind of similar to the Kong thing. It was giving him a job or something that he felt like, all right, this is my purpose. And in all honesty, I wonder if the Kong deal wouldn't work with him because it gives him something to do or a job to complete, because that was his deal. And great dog, a very sweet dog, mild natured, didn't get into anything, but man, he liked to wander. And that really helped him. We had no problem with him from the time he was 14 to when he passed away at 20. He never wandered again after that. We leave the gate open, he wouldn't even leave because he felt like this is what I'm supposed to do. So I might honestly would try the Kong with him as well and try to give him a job to do for a bit, so he knows, like, this is what I'm supposed to do here.
Another great information. Thank you, Ricky. Anything last second questions? Anybody have anything?
And I might just add, Jeremy, at the very end is, I have gotten really good at this and have perfected it only in the last couple of years. I had dogs for many, many years, over a decade, before I figured out what was actually happening. So, if you get a dog, just be very patient with yourself and know that, like, the stuff that I shared tonight isn't something I just knew or man, I've always just been good at it. I have failed a lot, and the failures I learned from the failures. And like I said, I wish I had known now what I wish I had known back when I got Rascal and Bruno before they passed away what I know now. And I think I could have been a lot better dog owner and dog trainer. But like I said, I've gotten this perfected in the last few years. So, if you're listening, you tune in later and you're not watching this live, or you did tune in tonight, just be very patient and know that it might take you training through the dog you have now, and it might be 2 dogs from now, 5 years from now, before you finally get your feet under you, and that's okay. It takes time.
Ricky, good information. Thank you very much for dropping in this evening to spend some time with us on the Mountain Zoom. Great topic. We've done over 150 of these things, and this is the first time we've covered a topic of this nature. And I think it's something that everybody is always looking for, whether they own a dog, like I said earlier, or they're looking for a dog. And hopefully this will make folks that may be watching this have a little bit more ease of things that that they want to try. But thank you again. Shad, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, nope, I'm good.
Good deal.
Oh,
Good deal. Well, Ricky, again, thank you very much. I see a lot of thank yous coming in there on chat. Everybody, thank you for joining us this evening for the Mountain Zoom, and we'll hope you'll join us next week. Phil, Shad, myself will post the information coming up soon for next Tuesdays. We'll shift back to Tuesday next week, and but again, thank you very much, and you all have a great evening.
Thank you.